Hi, you've clicked on to today's tropical tidbit for Monday. Over here in the Atlantic, things are fairly quiet, although there are a couple of regions of thunderstorm activity that we are watching. Over here in the Western Caribbean, we have a batch of thunderstorms developing associated with an area of upper low pressure in the Northwest Caribbean, and the cold air aloft provided by that is increasing instability, and along with the divergence east of the trough, we are getting these thunderstorms going off. There is a little bit of low-level vorticity to the east of Nicaragua, but this will probably be moving inland over the next 12 to 24 hours or so, and no development is expected in the near term. But as we go out in time over the next few days, we will be expecting some low pressure to gradually start developing in this region near Central America, as the MJO upward motion pulse is in this area of the world, and the monsoonal low is expected to begin strengthening again on the computer models, and we will probably get low pressure developing in either the Eastern Pacific or the Atlantic side, or perhaps even both if it's an elongated area of low pressure with time. We have a tropical wave east of the Lesser Antilles Islands over here moving west-northwest. This may need to be monitored as it has a nice inverted V signature and well amplified as it moves west-northwest. However, we have a draped Tut trough laying over here west-northwest to east-northeast oriented over the North Caribbean islands, and this will probably be inducing wind shear from the west-southwest over this wave as it moves into the Caribbean, and thus may not be in a favorable position for development. Nevertheless, we will watch this well-defined wave as it moves west-northwest into the Caribbean over the next few days. If we go over to Africa, there's a tropical wave I want to show you guys over western Mali, that is over here over western Africa, moving slowly west-northwest, slower than most tropical waves do over this part of Africa. It will be getting out over the Atlantic in a couple of days or so, and the GFS has been hinting at this wave perhaps trying to develop into a weak area of low pressure once it gets out into the eastern Atlantic. This is the GFS day 5. Notice this little low sitting out here west-southwest of the Cape Verde Islands, and this continues west-northwest and remains as a weak area of low pressure. And this will be interesting to see because the Cape Verde season is just around the corner, as we are now getting into mid-July, and by the time we get into later this month and on into early August, we are going to be watching out here in the eastern Atlantic for things to start getting more active, and this may be one of our first tropical waves that tries to develop into something else a little bit more defined than just a pure wave, because this is one of the more well-defined waves in the low to mid-level wind fields that I have seen so far this season. So once it gets out over the water here, we may have something to watch out in the eastern Atlantic, which will start to spice things up. Also notice on the GFS here again this broad monsoonal low that I mentioned on the satellite that will be developing. It has a little bit of a low here in the Gulf of Honduras and another low here in the eastern Pacific, and it will be interesting to see who wins the battle here. Remember when Tropical Storm Arlene developed a little while ago, we had the Caribbean side low, and then we had a little low down in the eastern Pacific, and I mentioned how Arlene had the advantage here in the Caribbean where it was favored for pressures to lower the most, and thus this low in the eastern Pacific would eventually dissipate, which it did, and merged with this up here, and we got development of Arlene in the southeast Bay of Campeche. Here, the eastern Pacific is likely going to have the advantage over the Caribbean, and the reason for that is if we go to the 500 millibar anomalies for 120 hours, notice this large area of very well below normal 500 millibar heights, up to 5 standard deviations below the climatological mean for this area of the world, and this is indicating to us that so much air is rising in here that despite the latent heat release, the pressures at the surface are lowering because air is exiting the top of the air column faster than it can be replaced at the bottom, so surface pressures are lowering, and that lowers the 500 millibar pressure surface as well, and therefore we get these big negative anomalies showing up on the eastern Pacific side, indicating that they have the favored area for upward motion, meaning that if we get a monsoonal low developing in here, it's likely to be eastern Pacific weighted, and thus if we do get something in here, I would not expect significant development on the Atlantic side, and if we do get anything, it may stay rather far south due to the big ridge up over Texas that we have, again similar to the Arlene situation, and we may not get anything at all on the Atlantic side if it's too close to Central America and we have something well defined on the eastern Pacific side. So we will be watching that situation closely, though probably nothing too significant for the Atlantic. However, Central America will again have to deal with very heavy rains due to whatever monsoonal depression tries to develop in that area. So not a whole lot to watch for in terms of short-term significant development right now. We have a couple of tropical waves. We will be watching the monsoonal circulation to see what may come of that, and we will have waves over Africa coming off in several days later this week and next week that we may watch to see if we can get any kind of a Cape Verde season starting to get going even this soon in July. Alright, that's it for today. Thanks for watching.